Okay, Randy K., I am so excited to have you on our podcast today. So thank you so much for being here. I know Billy knows your story, but I have not actually heard it. And I am really fascinated by near-death experiences. And apparently you have a good one. So can you just take us back to the moment that you realized you were dying, what was happening physically, and what was happening spiritually?
Yes, Jen. Well, good to meet you, and thank you for having me. I was coming back from an interview, actually. I'd a company that I'd been with, we were launching an Alzheimer's drug. Anyway, long story short, that didn't pan out. And so I was flying back from the East Coast, had nothing really to drink, very little sleep. Woke up in the middle of the night, had a swollen calf, could barely walk. Went for a bike ride of all things, which I should not have done because that exacerbated the problem. I went up the coast of San Diego on the bicycle and could barely breathe. My calf was about 1.5 times its size. Wow. Made my way back to the house, tried making breakfast that morning, and could not make it out to the side yard to empty the trash because by that time I could barely breathe. I thought at first it was asthma, so I took my inhaler and that didn't have any effect. So I knew this was different than what would be an asthma attack or something of that nature. And so I made my way to the doctor's office, and during the examination, I collapsed. And then I was in the emergency room. In the emergency room, I was barely able to breathe, and it was discovered that I was in very bad shape. In fact, the ER physician said that I was a walking dead man because I had let this go so long.
Wow.
By the time I had made it into the emergency room, I had 7 clots, one near my heart, 6 that were blocking the pulmonary artery, which is the main blood flow to the lungs. And so that was completely occluded. It was determined that they were going to originally helicopter me to University of San Diego Hospital. And it was determined by the time I would get there, I would be dead. So the only thing to do really at that point was just pump me with anticoagulants. And meantime, the patient next to me had MRSA, which is a drug-resistant bacterial strain.
Absolutely.
And was escorted out of that area. But by that time, I had contracted the MRSA. It had actually gotten into my bloodstream. So that exacerbated the problem to the point where I was clotting throughout my body. The physician tried to draw blood from my arm and could not. It was like a traffic jam.
And so this
my
was
bloodstream.
Completely undetected by you. You know, you had no idea that you're struggling with clots, and it's so crazy to me because you were, or you still are, a CEO and a medical researcher, right?
Yes, I was in the field. I should have known better. You know, that old saying, "Ignorance is bliss," and I was a very happy person. You know, I thought, no, this can't be anything like that, and indeed it was.
Wow.
Yeah. So it was. You had asked Jen about what it was like then.
Yes.
At the very tail end.
Clots. Yes. Keep going. I'm just, wow. They can't draw your blood. That's where we were. My mind is already blown. I'm excited.
Yeah. I was, at that point, I was flopping around I was convulsing on the hospital bed. I was like a floppy fish out of water. I'd lost control, could not breathe.
Wow.
And so,
were you emotionally panicked at this point? Because obviously your body is shutting down. I mean, what's going through your mind?
Yeah, I remember that call because they put the phone up when I called my wife. And I realized it was the first time I'd realized that what the physicians were telling me was that there was a possibility, they didn't want to use the term probability, that I would die, because there was a patient before me who was a surfer, And she came in with a lesser condition than mine and had died earlier that morning. So I had that kind of top of mind that this was a possibility for me. And I at that point, I was at a point of consternation, essentially, because we had lost the drug indication. The FDA recalled our drug that was a possible cure for Alzheimer's.
It's
We were
ridiculous
on the
to me.
front
Oh
cover
my
of Time
goodness.
magazine and all of the major networks. And so my daughter was suffering many strokes at the time. So it was a time that I had a crisis of faith when I went
Sure.
into this.
Wow.
So I remember sitting in the coffee shop with my wife before all of this happened, 2 weeks before, and we were lamenting the fact that we had lost much of what we had in terms of our own personal finances because of the
Wow.
drug withdrawal. Zeroed out much of our finances, and I said, at least we have our health. 2 weeks later, I was
Oh my
dead,
That's
clinically
like
dead.
Job.
Yeah. And so I was Billy, I was thinking not much at that point, quite frankly. This was survival mode.
Okay.
Sure.
And at the point, I'm not thinking, God, where are you? Anything of that sort. It was just, I can't breathe.
Right.
And
You're in that moment of struggle and panic, and so as this is going on, it's reaching this inevitable conclusion, and it wasn't the final conclusion, but of a death, essentially. I mean, take us through those moments and what happened.
Yeah. So immediately my body went still. And initially it felt like a tugging at my hospital gown. And later I would come to realize that was my spirit leaving my body.
Oh, wow.
And then I became a third party to my body. So I was looking down on this still body. I knew that was my body, but that wasn't me. I did not have any sense that was me because I was in a different place. And this light was shining over me and it was pulling me. It was pulling me upwards. And I was just kind of going with the flow, if you will, at that point. And initially, I was being pulled up through this galactical space, for lack of a better way of putting it. It was pulling me at a rapid speed. The next visage I saw was a kind of a surreal background. And I saw these figures that were warring before my eyes. I saw on the right side, I saw these towering figures, which I later came to understand were angels. On the left side, I saw these other towering figures that were more decrepit looking. I later came to understand that those were demons. They were warring over my soul. And as I had prayed about this after the fact, because I was just assimilating all of this, I wasn't really thinking about what was going on. I realized I had entered into this period of death, after death, at a point where of a crisis of faith. And so there was a warring over my soul. I was born anew. I taught in church.
Mm-hmm.
I was a Christian, but still there was something going on that was beyond me at that point. I was just a spectator. And I knew implicitly, as the angels were kind of gaining the victory, because I could see them warring over and the light was shining on them as well as me, not on the left side, the demons as I knew them to be, but the light was on the angels and myself. I knew to cry out the name of Jesus Christ.
Right.
Wow.
And as soon as I cried out the name of Jesus Christ, I was side to side with this figure who I knew was Jesus. And I could feel his soft whiskers on the right side of my face. And I just caved. I just collapsed. And I was sobbing I knew I was in the presence of God, and the first thought was, so this is love. So this is love. The person of love was so impactful to me that I knew that this was love, consummate love. And I was sobbing, and then these arms wrapped around my shoulders started lifting me up, and I felt completely unworthy being in the presence of love. He turned me around, and I was face to face with this figure, love. And then he whispered into my right ear. He said, "Trust me." To this day, that's my mantra. That's how I live my life. Right. And he knew that I was not a trustworthy person by nature. But there was something then that happened. I looked into his eyes, and there was this brilliant light cascading from him, which was obfuscating his face to some extent, but I could see the outline of his face, his nose, his eyes, which were reflected from the light, and they were reflected of different shades in his eyes. And then that light tunneled into every dark place within me. I mean, shedding the light of Christ, illuminating me, and infusing me with this joy. And at that point, he had hugged me so tightly. Oh my goodness, that hug! Oh, and then he brought me on a journey, and it was a journey of my life. Uh-huh. And it dated back into my early childhood. And there were different vignettes that he showed me. And I realized that he was showing me how he had redeemed the various parts of my life, because I eventually had become an agnostic. And he showed me how he'd been with me every moment of my life, bringing me to this point.